We've all heard stories of people who, despite facing the worst circumstances, still manage to overcome incredible odds and achieve success. And if you know Jack Maxwell III, you know that his story is exactly that. In today's episode, Jack shares how he overcame a childhood full of severe abuse, neglect, and addiction to become a community champion. Jack now owns a thriving insurance business, serves on multiple nonprofit boards, and dedicates his life to reaching people at their lowest points, helping them find hope and a path forward. In this episode, you'll hear about Jack's challenging upbringing and discover what it actually took for him to become who he is today. Hi, I'm Daniel Roberts, host of the Giving Town podcast, where we share stories about the people and organizations that make Newburgh so great. This podcast is brought to you by my real estate team, the Joyful Roberts Group, where we help your family make the right move. We love serving this town and our amazing clients, and we would love to help you with buying or selling a home anywhere around the greater Newburgh area. If you're interested, you can learn more about us at thejoyfulrobertsgroup.com and reach out for a free 1-hour consultation. Well, thanks for tuning in to this episode. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Jack Maxwell III. Jack, thank you so much for joining me on the Giving Town podcast today. I look forward to hearing more about your story, sharing that with our listeners, and just learning about some of what you've done in the community and what you've been through to get you to this point now. So it's great to have you on today.
Hey, thanks a lot. It's good to be here, man.
So a lot of people know who you are. They've obviously if they drive down 99, they see the American Family agency that you own. And a lot of people who know you know that you've been involved in different boards and nonprofits. But I think there's a lot of people who don't know the extent of your story until I heard you share at City Club. I think it's been a few months ago now. I had no clue what you'd been through. I'd heard your name around town, but didn't know really the extent of what you had to overcome to be here. So what I want to do is give you an opportunity to share kind of a version of what you shared at City Club, and then we can kind of talk from there. So what was it like growing up, and then how did that lead you to where you are now?
Yeah, so again, thanks for having me, man. It's such a cool thing to be able to just share my story and share a story of hope. We were raised here in Newburgh. This is home. This has been home for us for a long time. I wasn't born here. I was born in Baker, but my dad was in a traveling band, and not long after we ended up here, staying here, being here. So this has been home for a long time for us. I grew up in a very low-income home with one little brother, and mom was a single mom taking care of us. We had 3 other siblings who had been taken by the foster care system, and so we had never met them. At an early age, I don't even really remember them being talked about a lot. I don't think I was even 10 until I started having conversations about them and finding out about them. And we weren't even 17. I was 17 when we took the first photo ever of all 5 of my siblings together. And it was a pretty great moment. But growing up, we lived on 9th Street here in Newburgh. It's, as we all know, a very low income part of town. It was, I didn't know a lot different. So for a lot of my early on, it was, I remember somehow a lot of the happy things, which is like, mom just laughing with us. It felt rare, but it was so nice when it happened. When I was really young, I came home. We went to school just across the street there, and I came home, and my mom was being handcuffed or thrown against a car. And again, we only had mom, so I'm watching what little I have and don't really understand. I mean, I know what cops are. They are there, I find out later, because of a comment I made to a DARE officer who took the information and acted upon it. I remember walking into a room often, whether it was a living room to bathroom, and somebody was doing drugs of some kind at a very young age. I was My earliest memories are 5 and 6, probably, of that happening. And what is interesting about this is, like, we lived a life where most of the clothes we got were from us dumpster diving at the antique store down the street and pulling out clothes, pulling out different items, pulling out whatever we could get from the throwaway. And I remember being so excited about it. My life was such that I was excited for very little things because we had so little. And we were, I remember wearing the same clothes to school every single day. I did a video and an interview because I support the Newburgh High School resource room. And when doing that video, I got pretty emotional because I was thinking just how, if something like the resource room existed when we were younger, how differently my life would have felt. It may not have been different, but it would have felt different. I remember going to school every single day and being made fun of for wearing the same sweatpants I was wearing all the time. And oddly enough, sweatpants are now they're back in, it seems like. But it was hard just being, I was very quiet. From the very beginning, I remember just feeling alone. And I didn't connect with people well. I have a lot of mental struggles that I've gone through since a very young child, with a lot of PTSD and a lot of just a lot of things come from not having any security in your life. And we didn't have healthy role models. We didn't have a lot of the things that build people up. And so it was very challenging. When I would get made fun of, I would just get mad because it was just another person who was seeing me as something less than. And I didn't understand then that, like, people laugh with you. Like, simple things like that, simple things like someone messing with you because they like you. My brain just didn't know the difference. And there's a lot of challenges with me in just a lot of, clinical ways that made those things hard anyway. And through a lot of mental health, I've been able to overcome a lot of those challenges. I'm on the spectrum, and I have a hard time looking people in the eyes, and a lot of people can see that. And so through life, it's been challenging trying to overcome a lot of that, but thankfully I have. But as a child, I didn't get a lot of those opportunities to overcome it. I didn't have anyone saying, hey, maybe we should do this differently, or I'm going to challenge you. There was a lot of abuse growing up. I remember, I think it was common back then, but I remember just like being at the point where mom would break another thing on my butt and I would just laugh. Like big cooking spoons and not small objects. But it just goes to show like how a mind will adapt to something. So mom gets arrested and grandma lives next door. Grandma is the apartment manager for the apartment complex just next to ours. And so me and my brother instantly are given to my grandmother. And within days, she's decided she's going to keep my brother, and she searched for my father. And I had never met him. I'm 8 years old. I've never met my dad. I heard only bad stories. I'll say it that way. A lot of stories of him trying to murder people and abusing my mom to the point where people couldn't recognize her. All things that I'm told. I'm only 8, so these are all things I've been told, and my mind's tortured by them, but I also feel like an overwhelming urge to like still think he's a superhero to me. The guy that I had never met was somebody that I wanted to meet, and regardless of what people said about him. So grandma found him And he came and got me. And the next 2 years of my life were awful. There were locks on the outside of my room, and I was locked in often. There was an immense amount of emotional, physical, mental abuse in ways that I don't share with people because I feel like it's damaging to hear it. And I don't think me telling it helps anyone understand me anymore. But I will say that when you've heard of some of the worst possible types of abuse, those are things that I went through. And those 2 years were just an absolute nightmare. I just prayed for the day that Mom would show up. And one day she showed up at my school, and then the school alarm went off. Somehow my dad found out and notified the school. And at the same time the alarms are going off, I look over and my mom is standing at the window at the school. So she was gone, and I wasn't told anything. And all I remember is thinking, okay, she's alive and she's around. I used to, anytime I was outside, I used to look around just hoping she would just appear. She wasn't a good role model, but she never didn't love us. And I attached to it. It was literally the only good thing in my life that I could remember. And it was 6 months after that my father decided that I was too much for him too. And he dropped me off at the police station in Forest Grove, and I'm 10 years old. And as far as I know, officers don't know. He literally told me to get out of the car, and I walked into the police station and he drove away. And it felt like I was there for a really long time. But I remember thinking, like, this is both the best day of my life, and I couldn't help shake the feeling of like one more person who doesn't want me. And going through all those things, lack of connection, we moved all the time. I mean, I personally remember 3 times in 1 year, but I know it was more than that. Never being able to get comfortable with friendships. As hard as it was to like even just talk to people without sweating and falling apart, we moved so much that even the people that I did become close with were gone pretty quickly. And that mixed with abuse, including sexual abuse, and a lot of the other things that I went through, I was a extremely angry and extremely broken person. And I'm only 10 years old. I remember just not knowing how. I was afraid all the time. I remember not knowing how to handle any situation except for with anger. I was a very angry person, and really, I was just a very scared person, a very scared 10-year-old little boy who just wanted to be loved. And of course, so by this time, Mom is actually in a much better place. She's not fully sober, but she's a much healthier human being. She's the healthiest by far that I'd ever seen her. I remember thinking at 10 years old, like, oh my gosh, she's doing really good. And so excited for it. And my brother's there, and so I get to be back with him. Missed him so much. He was so much of my childhood, and so all of my happy thoughts were my brother. And so what happened was that it created this numbness within me that muted all healthy things. And at the time, of course, like, I didn't understand any of it. It's only looking back where I can actually label it and understand it through a lot of therapy, through a lot of work in helping other people, seeing in them what I saw or what was happening in me, helped me so much in just finding myself and becoming a strong, healthy person. A lot of people who go through things similar say, you know, when they come out, they got their second chance at life. It was my first chance. But where it left me was just a very angry person who, of course, pushes everyone away. I wanted so badly for people to just love me and hug me, and it made people not even want to be around me. And of course, that made me more angry. And we got in an accident when I was 13, and it was a pretty severe car accident where we were driving full speed in Sherwood, and me and my brother were in the back seats, and we never stopped and hit a stopped car, and everyone was pretty hurt. But they put me on pain meds and a controlled substance. And I remember feeling for the first time in my entire life good, like just good. Like if there were a God, this is it. Like a moment of, I want this for the rest of my life. I remember thinking, if people have a feeling that is normal, what normal people feel like, this has got to be that feeling. And I was instantly addicted. Instantly. From the very first one, at 13 years old, I feel like I was put on the tracks to like some sort of normalcy in my life, which of course it's not that. It's everything but that. But my brain doesn't know the difference. It's seeing relief. It's seeing and feeling my brain slow down. I'm not watching behind me all the time like I was before. And the pain medicine only lasts so long. You run out. And I've quickly found that alcohol was a good substitute. It made me feel very similarly in my depression and anxiety. It calmed it. It helped me sleep. And I had a cure. As far as I knew at the time, I had a cure. I would go on to use substances and drink every single day until, so I am over the age of 40, and I'm 41, and I got sober at the age of 30. And as far as I know, there was not a sober day. I mean, it was living a life where I was just trying my best to just numb everything out and escape. And I had 5 amazing children, and you know, I wasn't there for them. I was in no way the father that I wanted to be to my kids.
So what happened from actually, there was a question I had and I want to kind of put a tag in and come back to kind of what happened after that. You know, you mentioned with your dad and with your mom, and one of the things that breaks my heart the most is seeing parents who not only are just not there for their kids, but also who are just actively abusive. And obviously, well, that's never excusable. There's also often a cycle of abuse. And do you know any of your parents' history of like what their childhoods were like, or did you ever get to hear those stories?
Yeah. So, you know, through adult life, I ended up hearing a lot of them. I ended up getting a lot of confirmation that the ones I heard as a kid were real. But I quickly found that hurt people. And, mom didn't experience a lot of physical abuse, but she experienced a lot of, not present parents. There was a lot of alcohol. With Jack, my father, there was an immense amount of abuse, both to him and his siblings, in every way that I was abused. And so, yeah, to answer your question, I mean, I don't know that I was ever hurt by someone who wasn't hurt.
And we'll get to the part kind of your involvement now in helping others break those cycles. And I'm always just so impressed when someone is able to break that cycle. In my own, obviously I don't want to turn this around on me, but for me, it's been interesting just seeing that generation, the generational history in my great grandfather was extremely abusive to my great grandfather. My great grandfather was emotionally abusive to my grandfather in ways that make me still cry. And my grandpa tried to be there for my dad and, but didn't know how to be a dad, but tried.
Yeah.
And my dad was able to take that and do everything that he could to give us a good childhood. And I'm trying to continue that on and being actually there for my kids and be a good role model. But it's interesting. It takes, 5 generations of getting out of the extreme abuse. And you seem to maybe cut that down a few generations. But it gives us a lot more empathy, I think, when we recognize, it's one thing to just, my initial response hearing the story of like what your dad did is to just be filled with anger and hate. But when you recognize, like, if you could see the same reels of him being a kid suffering the same things, it doesn't make it right, but it helps you be like, oh wow, like this is someone who didn't have the tools to ever know anything different. So anyway, that said, it's very sad, obviously, but it's incredible that you were able to somehow break out of that.
Yeah.
So coming back to 13, you get on drugs, alcohol. What was that path? Because you mentioned you got kids now, so somehow along the way, you were able to, find love and in the midst of all that, still have somewhat of a life. So what did that look like going through that period?
Yeah. So it's, a lot of it's a blur, to be honest with you. There was a point where I was a functioning addict and alcoholic to some degree. I mean, it's a weird phrase because it's like I found a way to hide how bad I was long enough that I had some sort of appearance of a normal life, right? That's really what that means. Because I was bad. And, a lot of that time was, I would say, so the worst was 18 through 26.
So were you able to get through school at that time?
No. So, I mean, there was probably some correlation, but the truth is that I went to Newburgh High School, and one of the extracurricular things that I did, which did not help, was, it helped me personally, like in it was dance. I was the first male dancer at Chelan Valley Dance Academy. And I loved doing it. But it meant a lot of ridicule. It meant being made fun of and ridiculed a lot. And my already sensitive, unbalanced self, it just broke me. And honestly, it was one of the only things keeping me, I felt confident in it. I felt like I was good at it. I felt like I was making friends there, and I felt so strong in it. What happened is a very interesting thing. When you do shows, when you're doing dancing, they put makeup on you, even if you're a guy, and just like they would with acting or anything else. But I fell in love with hiding myself. When I would look in the mirror, and I had makeup on for a show, I would think to myself that I was happier with the way I looked. I'm not sure why, because I don't think it necessarily made me look a lot different, but I think it was more the idea of like covering up who I was and getting to be someone different.
You're not a type 3, are you, on the Enneagram scale?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
I am too. That's prototypical.
Yes. Yeah. So it's like, and now, I've done a lot of work on myself. So being able to admit a lot of the things that then embarrassed me, it comes easy now. But then it was terrifying. The rumor got around that I wore makeup because I started wearing it on a normal basis. And I was the laughingstock. And I got beat up twice around the topic before I finally said, just stop going. So the emotional torment of like, I have ADD. I have a lot of challenges as far as like education, paying attention, being able to like, even when I wanted to apply myself, it's just so hard. I would sit down and read, and I would be 3 pages in and not remember anything that I read. And it was just like, why did I even do this? And the teachers are getting mad. So all the things, it's like this big ball ready to explode. And it's just like, why am I even trying? Why am I here? They want to put me in a special class with special kids. It's like, I'm tired of being a special kid. That's how I felt. I'd rather just not go. A lot of times I felt like I would rather just be dead. And I just stopped going. When I stopped going my second freshman year, I hitchhiked to Chemeketa to get my GED because there was something inside me that still didn't want to be unsuccessful. And I completed it pretty quickly. I was proud of it. And I tried going to Job Corps because I heard it was really great. But, being away from family was just so hard. It was just so hard. And honestly, like, you can't really drink there when you're underage, and you can't do bad things. And so it's like, I just had to come back. I went through Express in McMinnville, and I ended up with a job spinning a sign. And I was somewhat okay with it because I could like just keep it in front of my face most of the time. But the manager at Go Wireless, which was where I was flipping a sign for, ended up saying like, hey, do you want a job? And I ended up getting a really great job. And I started my sales life. It's where I met my now wife. And I have a lot of memories from there. I learned a lot of amazing, they were very big on the relational sales before it was a thing yet. And I remember thinking like, this is, I love doing this. The success of like building that relationship and being able to offer somebody something that they wanted, but also needed, trying to find that fit. It was, for the first time in my life, I was able to, in a healthy way, like solve a problem and build a relationship. And I was like, man, I love this. Sales became my healthy relationship in my life. And I knew instantly I wanted to do some type of sales, but I didn't want to do it because I liked selling product or making good money. I wanted to do it because I wanted to help people solve their problems. I wanted to help them find the right fit for them and whatever it was that they needed in their life so that they could smile a little more. It was something that I had never experienced. I wasn't very good at being a positive anything to anyone. Again, I was very angry all the time. And, the alcohol and the drugs, and they were there, but they were, again, functioning means I was able to keep it at a low enough level where I was able to keep some sort of a normal life. But I hadn't done any work on me. And so where I'm left with is I'm finding success in getting the attention of the opposite sex. And when I didn't have a lot of things in my life that felt good, but when I got that attention, it just felt good. It became my focus. It became so much of my life. And, it's interesting. When you were telling me your story, I appreciate just your openness and your willingness to share. It is hard to see the ones we love hurt even more than it's hard to hurt ourselves. And so I appreciate your vulnerability and stuff. But when you were talking, I was just thinking like, there's so much bad, but here we are. Like, I have this incredible life today. And I believe that not only is it in overcoming the things that I've overcome that have put me in the place that I am, but it's because of them. I have a unique opportunity in my life to see people with a very unjudgmental eye because I know how bad I got, and I'm able to see their brokenness as just a challenge in their life, right? Because people who have healthy role models, positive relationships, good support systems, connections with people around them, they don't, I mean, being an addict, anyone could be an addict. It's an interesting thing, and we could talk more about it later if you'd like, but it doesn't pick and choose. Like, it can get any of us, but when we have so many of those healthy supports, the odds of us just growing up and having a healthy life are so much better. And I'd say I beat the odds. At my worst, I'll say about my children, I am not proud of the fact that I have 5 amazing children, and there are 4 moms of those 5 children. The idea that none of them were mistakes, but they were all created during a time in my life that most of my life I'd go back and change is an odd thing to think about and feel through. Because I appreciate everything in my life today, and it's thanks to the bad and the good. So I tell everyone I'm so grateful for my life, and that if I could go back and I could change any of it or all of it, I wouldn't. I'd go through it again to be right where I am today, talking with you, being able to be a part of comfort for other people. It got so bad that at the age of 29, I took my own life, and I was successful. They brought me back to life. I was shocked back to life, and I woke up in a hospital with handcuffed to a bed and tar down my chest.
Now before this, if I remember right, so you'd gotten married,
I had not gotten married yet.
Oh, you had not gotten married yet?
No.
Okay, but you were, trying to remember this sequence, but was that, because at one point I guess, was it your girlfriend who had your kids?
Yes.
Was that before or after? I don't want to tell your story, but there's a time where she said she kind of gave you an ultimatum. Was that before that?
It was before that. Yes.
Okay. So can you share what happened?
Absolutely.
At that point?
Yes. So, I'm glad you asked, because I'm so proud of her. This is the woman that I'm married to now. She's the woman of my dreams, and I'm so lucky to have her in my life. But she got fed up. I had gotten to a point where I was using hard drugs. It wasn't just pain medicine anymore. It was the ultimate attempt to blot out my life. I tell a lot of people, like, I'm addicted to just feeling different. I don't know what the outcome is necessarily. I don't need to know that outcome in order to do it. Like, I was the kind of addict where I was searching for something else. I just wanted to feel different. But it had gotten really, really bad. I got to the point where I was 115 pounds, and that's about half the weight I am now. And I was completely absent. There wasn't a bad person in me, but I had gotten to the point where it had been so far removed from the person that I was that it was unhealthy for me to be around my kids. And she knew that. And she loved me. And she had many nights where she would cry and just pray that I was alive, pray that I would be in jail instead of dead, which, is abusive. And, it makes a big impact on people. We don't put our hands on someone to have them traumatized. She loved me so much that she set a boundary. She kicked me out. She moved and wouldn't even tell a lot of her family where she moved so that I couldn't find her. This was the start of me giving up, because I had lost the only person who would still put up with me. Basically, everyone else had already given up. But it's interesting because this is something that we face every day when trying to help people, as families and wives and parents say, well, I don't want to kick them out because they're going to go out there and die. They're going to go out there and their lives are only going to get worse. They're not going to get better. I can tell you that is not true. It made my life a lot worse, and I could have been successful, and I could very well not be here, but it's just my belief that that's why faith exists, right? We can do all the wrong things and end up in the right place. That is a big part of my story. I did everything wrong, and I ended up in the right place. And I believe that I owe a large part to grace, but I also believe that I've been equipped to help other people. I've been equipped to be able to understand them, meet them where they are, not judge them, and know that good people do bad things.
Yeah.
And I look back and I'm so grateful for the ultimatum, because it forced me into change. I went all the way to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, trying to run from my problems, and where I go, there I am. And that's where I attempted to take my own life. And so when I woke up and I had tar down my chest and I was brought back to life and I was handcuffed to a bed.
You said you had tar down your chest?
Yeah, where they pumped my stomach.
Oh, okay.
So I took a lot of substance and then drank a whole fifth of Jack Daniels and took my own life. I don't want to get too descriptive,
sure.
But it was very obvious when they arrived what I had done. And so knowing that, they pumped my stomach after I was back. And
so they find you?
So I was living with my cousin Joey, and my cousin Joey found me. And he happened to be sitting there with me when I woke up. Somehow they allowed him back. And this was a pretty big moment for me, because my little cousin Joey, I say little, he's only a few years younger than me, but he's always been my little cousin Joey. Him being there, that moment, for some people, there's this key moment in their life where a switch happens. And oddly enough, I'm sitting in a mental hospital, scared out of my mind, and my little cousin Joey has shown up for me. And I can't help but feel like I can't even die, right? I can't even give up. And this overwhelming feeling of, now this is the tipping off point. Like you and I, and not to get too spiritual, but I'm having a communication with something greater than me at the moment.
It's fair to call it God.
It's fair to call it God. Everybody can call it what they want, but it was a thing that I didn't know was God at the time, so I didn't know what it was. But all of a sudden, for the first time in my life, I'm sitting there open to the idea of whatever is just happening to me that says, okay, are we going to keep doing this and suffering for as long as we live? Or are we going to do something different? And I heard we, not as in talking to myself, but in something saying we together, you and me.
Wow.
And I felt a pretty big hug in that moment. I felt like I was no longer alone. My little cousin Joey sitting there, not giving up on me, no matter how far down I had gotten. And God giving me a warm hug saying, dude, I'm not going nowhere, was literally like a light switch being flipped in my life. It was something I had never before understood. And so you would think that I couldn't understand it. But the miracle of the moment was it was so clear. It was so clear. And I was in for an uphill climb. The mothers of my children had all gone together, and thankfully, I'm so grateful for their decision to keep the kids safe, but went and got emergency full custody and forced me to stay away. And I'm so grateful for that. But custody has been removed from me of all of my children. I don't have a job. I hadn't had a license in over 3 years. I hadn't had a good job in twice that long. I was 115 pounds. Nobody was going to hire me. I was freshly out of a detox center, and I didn't know what the heck I was going to do. And I got to tell you, it's a scary place to be when you want to live and have nothing. It's very scary. Luckily, I had started making good decisions in my life. And what I did was I got locked into a place called Provoking Hope out of McMinnville. And Provoking Hope is a recovery services business nonprofit that helps connect people with different help. Later, I end up becoming a certified recovery mentor through them, and in a lot because I really truly feel like they saved my life. But they helped me get locked into Helping Hands here in Newburgh. Helping Hands is a recovery shelter home. It's not short term. It's more of a semi-long term, 3 months to a year type thing where they build you up and help you find yourself, but also build in and help support you being able to take care of yourself enough that if you get your own place, you're going to be able to take care of yourself.
So you got brought back from Louisiana, or how did you get back?
Flew back.
Oh, you flew back?
Yes.
And then got connected with Provoking Hope and...
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
How did you get connected with Provoking Hope? Because that's kind of a miracle. And not a miracle, but I think like that, there's such a good program. How did that connection happen?
So I had known a lot of the people that I had been using with or drinking with in the past had gotten sober and have started putting the bug in my ear to get involved, go down there. They were reaching out to me a lot, and I didn't want help, so I wasn't answering. But when I wanted help and I knew they were there, I had a phone on me that didn't have any service, but it had Wi-Fi. So I found Wi-Fi and I sat on a curb and I posted on Facebook that I just wanted my life to feel better. And a car pulls up next to me. The person in the driver's seat opened the passenger door and said, "Hey, you want a warm meal?" And I looked up and recognized her from being someone from Provoking Hope. And I got in the car and I went down. They gave me the first hugs that I had in probably 3 years, and fed me and said, "There's another way." And I was pumped. I was ready to try whatever. To be honest with you, I didn't believe that I could be better. Nobody did. I was so far down that I believed there was no coming back from it, but there was no dying either. So it's like, do nothing and be miserable, or do something, and worst case scenario, I had hope, right? That was the principle in which I started living from, is worst case scenario, I had hope. So I just wanted to have hope.
That's fascinating, because just that point where you made that decision, like, I'm at least going to try, because so many people in your position, and even before getting to that position, I feel like get to the point where they say, what's the use in trying, because nothing's going to change anyway.
Yes.
And what do you think? I think that's where most people go. Like, the ideal is like something bad happens and that's the catalyst to change. But so many people, like, something bad happens, it's like, I'm a failure, I can't do anything. And they basically just spiral down until they eventually do die. So what do you think was for you? What do you think it was, that moment in the hospital that made you feel like there's hope, or was there something that made you, instead of just spiral down and say, what's the use in trying because I'll never change, that there's hope.
So I've thought a lot about this because, people want the cure. There are a lot of people who will say, like, what's the one thing? Like, what was it? There isn't. That's it's moments. Yeah. Moments are everything. People have a bad habit. I know I do. And I've seen in life that people, and it's from love, it's from a good place, but they will do a thing, an action, which will hopefully have an expected outcome. And when that outcome doesn't happen, it's seen as something negative. But my story, and in what helped me, is proof that those moments matter more than anything. Those little key moments where certain people would reach out to me from Provoking Hope and say, we're still here. I didn't know it at the time, but what it was telling me is they're doing it, right? I didn't lock that in. I didn't think that in my mind, but my subconscious thought it.
And for people who don't know, Provoking Hope, I think everyone through their mentor program has actually been through some type of substance addiction, right?
Yeah. So at least at the time, some of the requirements might be different now, but you had to have a year sober off of all substances, and which means you had to be an addict, right? You had to have that history, and it creates so much opportunity for people because I had burned down my life for a long time, and I didn't have a good reference. I didn't look like someone who could get a job. I couldn't afford to buy a suit or nice clothes. There was just none of that. And Provoking Hope was a way to be able to have all of that. And which was why I became a certified recovery mentor. And of course, like I want to take something so dark. A phoenix is a good illustration of like the way I feel my life is. And when I share with people, I call it rising from the ashes, because I really believe that that's what I've done. And it's hard because I've been risen from the ashes, right? Whenever I did my actions and I made my choices, I was drinking and using and not showing up for my kids and just doing a lot of things in life that weren't healthy. But at some point, there was this thing, and that moment for me was at the hospital, right? But they call it a burning bush moment, where, everything's better. Like, that is true. But without all the moments before, without my cousin sitting there as well, without knowing the people at Provoking Hope are going to be there for me when I flew back, right? Because all these bugs were planted, all these seeds were planted in my life. And so when I came back, I knew I had somewhere to go. I had never felt like I had somewhere to go. And in that moment, I did. And, moving into Helping Hands and being required to go to 90 meetings in 90 days, I went to 287 meetings in 6 months, which is just astronomical. It's
almost 2 a day.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. Yes. And I remember being so proud. I had an inch thick notebook of lists, because they have you do a list every month. And I literally had an inch thick, and I was so proud of it. Like, I would write how many I did and tally it.
You still type 3.
Yeah, I know. And I would tell people, like, and it wasn't like, ooh, look at me. It was more like, I'm proud of me.
Yeah.
I had to learn to be proud of myself, because I didn't get a lot of people saying I'm proud of you. And that's a very challenging thing to do. I think a lot of people still struggle with it. I love awards. I love just being thankful and grateful. I love being acknowledged, and I love acknowledging other people. I think it's a huge part of life, right? But those are those moments. We do those moments, and that's why the small things matter. Because when we're ready, because that's the key. What a lot of people miss is, like, it isn't necessarily even the moment that creates the solution. It's being ready. And I, in that moment, was ready. I'd become so tired of the other way that I was willing to just try something different. But I had things in my life that went, no matter how bad it is, you have support. You have something there. We have so much support in Yamhill County that It's mind-boggling. There is no reason that anybody will struggle with anything at any level if they're sober. Where we lack help is the people who can't get sober, the people who don't have people around them to show up at the hospital. I launched and I started working this program where I was attempting to be a liaison for, I called it the Homeless Empowerment Liaison Project, HELP. And I would just go to the street and I would talk to them and I would just say, these people, and I would say, like, if in a perfect world you could have whatever you wanted, would you be doing something different? The reason why the question matters is because they're solidifying in their own mind that they want something different. I do it because that was such a pivotal moment for me, realizing I wanted to do something different. It's like, maybe you can't have a better life, but if you could, would you do it? Right?
Yeah.
And then some say no. Some say, I'm comfortable here. And I say, are you high? And because of the first question, they'll be honest with me. And they'll say, yes, I am. And it's like, I'm sorry that you're going through this. I just want you to know that I'm here and I'm a resource. And what a lot of people don't realize is that it's impossible to understand people. Like, nobody should be judged for not understanding, because it's impossible to understand what you don't understand. But there's so many factors. I talked to one girl who said, I couldn't get help because to get help, I had to go to court behind a closed door. I was afraid to walk into a room and have the door closed behind me because of the things that I had been through as a child. To go to a therapist, I have to walk into a room and have a door closed behind me. Every time I get help, I have to but nobody knows this because no one's ever asked her the question.
Yeah.
So now I'm connecting with mental health therapists and judges and telling them, like, how can we make this happen without her going behind a closed door? And they made it happen.
Wow.
She's 2.5 years sober now. She has her own house. Like, we all will have that moment, but people need to know there is something there. We can have all the help in the world, but if someone doesn't know it, we can't judge them for not taking advantage of it because they don't even know.
Yeah.
That's my hope, and I believe that that's a part of what I've been built to, is just being willing to stand with anyone without judgment and say, like, if I can do this, anybody can do this. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of story. There's a lot of things. But the miracle is through all of this, I found a way to love myself. I was able to go to my father on his deathbed thanks to all the therapy that I had been through, anger management, codependency, mental health, many, many self-help classes, many, many hours. I was able to, even though he never asked for forgiveness, go to him and say, I forgive you, before he died. And it was extremely healing for me to be able to take the power out of it and forgive someone who never asked for forgiveness.
Now, you said on his deathbed, was he conscious or was he in a coma, or how did that go?
He was conscious. Yeah.
Okay.
He couldn't communicate back because he was already on hospice. He was on medication and he was in and out, but you can tell. And he heard me. And, he took with him the chance of me ever having a real dad. But through help, I learned that there's so much more available. Like, yes, everyone should have a dad. I believe that. A dad is such an important role. I've worked so hard to make up as best I can for all the time I missed with my kids. Because even when I was there, I wasn't there. And I believe today that I'm the dad that I deserved as a kid. I find time to give myself a hug and say, hey, I'm proud of you, because I didn't have it. And it's important that everyone hears it. I was a recovery mentor for Provoking Hope for a few years, and then I became chair of their board for another 3 to 4 before just taking on a lot of other life stuff, getting my own business. I had been with American Family for a long time and got the chance to get my own agency. And, I'd come a long way. but it also created a really cool opportunity for me to just help people. Being a business owner both exhausted me, but freed me up to be able to walk away when I needed to. Became a life coach and a sponsor to many guys in recovery. I launched the Responsible Dads program at Provoking Hope. Which,
You launched that?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, created the very first curriculum and activities and ran that program for a year and a half before, my brother actually ended up helping with it.
That was, so I ran into, oh, this is terrible. I'm spacing who I had on the podcast. I'm sorry.
If you're listening,
Yeah, but I had Provoking Hope on the podcast. I met, I think it was at the farmer's market when it was at Greeters, maybe, and then at the farmer's market. But what drew me to them was like a Responsible Dads program. Like that to me,
yeah,
like I'm one of the key things I live my life by is like, to whom much is given, much is required. And to me, actually, I guess in some ways for both of us, like you were given a chance you didn't deserve despite of that. I was given a great life and a lot of opportunity. So I'm thinking like, man, I've been given a lot. Like maybe some people don't see it this way, but I feel like I owe a lot because like I had like such like an amazing life. I had parents who were there for me. Like I need to make sure that like I can make the world a better place for being here. And I don't know exactly what it is. Like we all have those things that like tug at us and bring us to tears. Like, why am I crying about this? But like, like those things that just like are extremely profound. And for me, it's like being a good dad.
Yeah.
Like I feel like a huge majority of our world's problems would be solved if dads could be good dads in there for the kids and be a good role model and teach them like how to live and to love and like, with that being a man does not mean being, macho and emotionless, but like actually caring and protecting people around them and being a leader. It's funny. I don't normally share this, but I'm not going to get onto all of it, but my podcast used to be called the Elpis Project, ELPIS, which is the Greek word for hope. And, I later realized that like 5 of the key things made an acrostic that spelled that. So like being encouraging, being loving, protecting, inspiring, and serving. It's like, oh my gosh, that spells Elpis. So it was a weird thing. And it kind of was meaningful for me, but no one knew what Elpis meant. And they thought it was like the Elvis. But anyway, it's like, is it Elvis? So, but those things are like being a good dad, I think is like our role to like instill those things in our kids.
Yeah.
And so when I came across the Responsible Dads program, I was like, oh my gosh, like there's an organization who's focusing on this. So that like was part of what made me like, just like, want to learn more about them, have them on the podcast and like support them in other ways, like financially. I'm not like a regular sponsor, but like one of their events. And, so that's just really cool that you started that. Like, that's such a powerful thing. Which I'm tempted, like I want to talk all about that now. And there's already a whole podcast about Provoking Hope, but like, I guess maybe the question of what was so important to you to actually launch a program specifically about dads?
Yeah. So here's the thing. When you're that low, all I did was feel like I was no good. I couldn't be a part of making anything better. I couldn't be a good dad. I'd already screwed everything up way too much. It's even easier to feel that way when you're struggling in a lot of ways in life, when you're unable to pay your bills, when you don't have a good job, when you can't support your kids, when you can't pay your child support, when you can't do all of these things, right? So I'm like, man, the idea is giving that ounce of hope and saying like, I was just as bad as you. Look at my awesome life. Like, I was just as bad as you. I don't want to like try to be better than you, but I was worse than you. And I have this amazing life. So you can too. Like I have all my kids, and I was so passionate about this love, this like unconditional love that our kids have for us. But I wanted dads to know, like, we don't do it for that love, right? Our kids love us no matter what. Now we're just showing up to help make sure that they show up for other people. We're leading by example. We're being there for them. And I got to tell you, one of the hardest parts is like, I had this thing where it was like, I had already screwed up my kids too much by not being around. Like, I don't know if it was worse that I was around or not around when I was using and drinking. I don't know. It's easy to judge a dad who's not present in their kid's life. But I'll tell you, as an addict, you don't think like, am I going to spend time with my kids or am I going to go do drugs? It's not a thing. Drugs are so powerful. Addiction is so powerful that must first happen, or nothing else exists. And so just being able to go in and just be brutally honest with these guys and just be like, I feel what you're feeling, but I did a lot of steps in my life to become a better person, a better father. And my kids are resilient. They're all happy and healthy these days. And it's because I did those things. So let's do these things. These are the things that helped me. These are the things that help other people. Let's focus on these things. And then we also went over like, what's credit? What are the things? How can I get a better job? How can I find work clothes? And how can I find childcare for when I have a job, when they finally let me have my son for a day and then I have to work that day, right? It's navigating all that. Plus, like, let me tell you, navigating a court system as a guy who has only made mistakes for a really long period of time, who has been unpresent and absent and doing drugs or alcohol or whatever, and then trying to go in front of a courthouse and saying, yeah, I swear to God that I'm going to get better again. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so it's like, hey, we're going to be able to be that thing for you. You come in for this long and we'll go to court on your behalf and say, look at all the stuff he's done. Right? So it gives this solid way of saying, both showing support, but also like helping someone be better and knowing that there's light at the end of the tunnel. Because that hope at the end, that something good is going to happen, is not something that naturally happens within someone who has wrecked their life for a long time. And so, and plus, I feel the same way as you feel. Even though I was an absent father for so long, like I remember the moments my mom, even in using, would just hug me and say things to make me giggle. It's like, those are the moments I remember. The bad stuff is there, but I really lock into those small memories. And so just helping people see like we can overcome anything. And especially with kids, like they're so resilient. Just love them, just be there for them, support them. But also we want to parent out of guilt when we come back from not being around. We want to just say yes. We want to buy them everything they want. We want to be an unhealthy parent because we haven't been around a long time. So, and I think a lot of us, even in our healthy lives, struggle with that. It's hard, especially with my daughter. But we also got to teach that, like, this is how you not overparent. This is how to be a parent instead of a friend, And we saw a lot of success. It was very cool to be a part of it.
Yeah. You've been involved in a lot of different things around town. I know we're kind of running out of time here, but what do you think? What do you feel drives you? And you kind of already explained it a bit, but like to be so involved in the community, like Provoking Hope is a huge one, but also other organizations, like you've been a part of a lot of different boards, and some might say you spread yourself out very, thin, given that you have a business and 5 kids, because I kind of feel the same. I'm involved in a lot of things. I only have 2 kids. That's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So the truth is that when I was at my lowest, something was there to help me. And at one point that was Provoking Hope. At one point that was Helping Hands. At one point that was the food bank, YCAP. It was some of the churches that fed me. It was the Alcohol Anonymous meetings that took me in and gave me a sponsor for free. Like all of these things in my life when I had not a dollar to my name. I was given housing. I was given opportunity. I was given hope for free. And I couldn't have done that without those people being there working for free. It can't exist without a system. And I was given the miracle of support, and they expected nothing in return. And I knew that the healthier I got, the more I was going to do that. So I'm a part of a lot. I know why people are only president on boards when they're retired, because it's just a lot. But somehow I'm a president of something every year, and it's only so that I can be a part of a solution. I want to overcome the misconceptions of addiction, which are, there's a lot. They're plentiful, right? And I've done a lot of things, but just helping people see doing bad things doesn't make you a bad person. We are who we are, and then we do things. It's what I live by. We are the person we are, and then based on whatever the things are in our lives and how they impact us and how we allow them to impact us, we then make a decision in our lives, and it's either healthy or unhealthy. But it doesn't change who we are, right? We still are at our core who we are. I didn't have a chance to know who that person was, and therefore I couldn't love somebody I didn't understand. What these services in my life, all from anger management, mental health, treatment, all of the things that I've talked about, they're all things that were given to me for free by people who actually cared and believed in me that I could be something different. And I knew that I was going to make sure that I got to be that for other people. And so I have life coaches myself who help me make sure that I'm juggling the right amount at all times. I still find time to spend a lot of time with my family, to sit in front of a TV, to watch Blazer games. I'm not exhausted. I don't go home at 11 p.m. every night, don't see my family, go to sleep. I make the things that are important in my life a priority, and I still have time for them. So too much is kind of a loose term. I mean, it's like, does it look exhausting? Yes, it's probably too much. I just don't believe in it. I fit a lot of things in my day, and I get to not only bless, but be blessed by incredible people serving in so many ways. And my only hope is that I can bring some joy to everything that I'm a part of.
Did you feel, so you went in a fairly short time going from, it was you at your agency to gaining multiple employees, and now kind of like you're doing even more like life coaching type things now, and a lot of your efforts are spent in more of the like volunteer ways.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that passion, like I want to give back, like do you feel like that was part of what drove you to be successful and grow your business to the point where you're not like 24/7 doing the like everyday tasks?
Absolutely. I think once I got out of my own way and I realized like people wanted genuine, I was used to a childhood where you couldn't be yourself because people would judge you. And I think that's still true, but the world is a lot more loving of a place, I feel like. Some of that is my decision making, but some of it I feel is true. And I feel like I've been able to just be me and provide a service to people that they were going to need somewhere. And I was able to do it in a way that was just real. And because of that, our business runs on referrals. We don't do cold calls. We don't do any of that. And like, I'm so grateful. I say that humbly because it's such a miracle how it all works out. But just loving people and just serving has driven my business to be what it is, which is top 10% in the company. And we're in Little Newburgh and McMinnville. And most people are in millions of population, and we're in 60,000. And it happens because I remind myself every day to just be me and to just not focus on myself and try to focus on serving other people. And so that created the success. It created the opportunity. People have a hard time being inspired and relating to people who are perfect or appear perfect. People believe they can be helped. They're more inspired by people who are willing to just say like, I'm broken, just like you.
Yeah.
Because that's relatable. And luckily I'd come from a place so dark that in my recovery, which I celebrate 11 years, December 7th.
Congratulations.
Thanks so much. Yeah. A big deal. I blush every time I think about it because it's just a miracle. It's a big deal. And all this has happened in that 11 years, thanks to just it getting so bad that I was just willing to be myself regardless of what people thought. And like I feel like there's a thing that happens when you come back from something that bad. Even 5 years later, people don't want their community to know that they had that struggle because it's a judgment. It's an appearance. People, there is that hurdle there. That thing is very real. I just decided that I was willing to walk through it, and I've received way less judgment than I ever thought I would. And I've received so many more hugs and acceptance of my challenges in my life and my decisions than I could have ever imagined. And so for me, like, that's a big thing that I try to help people understand is like, it's okay to be you. It's okay to be broken. It's okay. You know, I say broken, but I believe like we're all fractured. Broken is like gone. And I don't think anyone's too far gone. I think that with hope and the right support, that anything in the world is possible. And I'm proof of it. And how could I not want people, especially the ones struggling, to understand that that's possible? I want them to live the same life as me. And, you know, I'll tell it to everybody. I'm not a one-off. I'm not just some miracle that happened. I know a lot of people who made similar decisions. Maybe they came from different backgrounds, but they made similar decisions to change their life. They included a higher power that they allowed to be in control instead of themselves. They decided to take suggestion in their life and do things that were uncomfortable and that they didn't understand. And they were willing to walk through problems instead of walk around them. And all of a sudden, their lives got amazingly better. And so, like, my story is great, but it's not just me. It's everywhere. People aren't as always willing to just open up and be honest about it and tell the story because it's vulnerable. It's scary. It's tough, but it's everywhere. And that is hope. Like, we can go anywhere and we can come back from it. And I did a lot of bad things in my life, but I was never a bad person. And hurt people do hurt people, but we can change the cycle 100%. And I believe I've made a big dent. And my little brother now works at MHAAO in Portland, which is one of the biggest recovery support services there is. They make big impacts, and you know, he's out there changing the cycle too. And my mom celebrated 10 years and she's changing the cycle too. And like, here we are, but everything is different. In 10 years time, we went from a hopeless family of alcoholics and drunks to people who are making a difference. And I think the story, the reality behind that is that if we just love on people and support people, they can come back from anything.
So what's next for you then?
Oh gosh, it's such a big question. I feel like I'm a firm believer in like 1 year, 5 year, 10-year goals, right? But I've also been shown that my best plans are just so little compared to what awaits. And while I make plans, I always keep my head up, because if I'm too focused in a specific direction, I miss so much of the miracle. I miss so much of, you know, like there's a path laid down before me, but I'm so focused that I don't even see it. I'm not even willing to do it. Sometimes you got to walk off into the blackberry bushes and do the difficult things in order for things to get better. So that's how I live my life. I know I've always wanted to be a motivational speaker. It's my life's dream to be able to do a TED Talks. I will do that. I will live my dreams. But I think a lot of my life is just, I'm going to continue to serve like crazy.
Coming in January, you're going to be starting a new either YouTube channel or podcast.
Yeah.
That's on air now.
Yes. Oh, no.
How do you do that?
Now I'm committing. Yeah. So I always wanted to do my own podcast, and I think you're going to be the first guest. But.
You know, I so appreciate your story, and there's just, I mean, so many good takeaways. And I think there's several things that you share, but what is one key takeaway that for people listening, and many people are involved in nonprofits, many people are, you know, my hope is that people listening can then go and be the resource for people who need it. there's not a whole lot of people who are addicts who are going to listen to a podcast and about, these kinds of things, but hopefully enough people listen that they can be aware and share with the people that they come across. That's at least my hope. But what is one key thing that you want to share with people?
Yeah, so if I had to take all these thousands of things and like cram it into one thing, I feel like the takeaway would be that life is moments. And instead of looking for solutions, if we just focus on the moment, if we live in right now, which is what a lot of 12-step programs teach us, is that if we let go of living in yesterday, which is already gone, and we don't focus on the future, which can change at any moment. No matter how much we do right, things can go wrong. But we live in the present, which is the one thing that we can control. Then we've given ourselves the best shot. And we've removed a lot of the fear of the past, fear of the future. We're no longer living in fear when we live in the moment because it's so real that we can't help but be in the moment and feel hope. So for me, it's like people ask me, well, how do I get my son home? How do I stop him from using? It's like, there's no way to give that answer. It's an impossible answer. All we can do is make moments. Be the moments that changed my life so that when that trigger moment happens for someone, and not just in addiction, right? In anything in life, then they can feel confident in thanks to those moments that happened in their life. So just be in right now, because it's such a big deal that we get right now. It's just such a blessing to be here right now and have all the amazing blessings we have. Like we woke up today and we could see and we could eat and we have warm homes and we have all the things we have. And there are a lot of people that don't have that. So moments are a big deal. And when we focus on moment, we find gratitude. And when we find gratitude, we find hope. And anything is possible with hope. So
I think you just answered my last question, which is what I ask everyone is what gives you hope for the future? But I think you just gave it.
Yeah. Yes. The answer is everything can go wrong and end up okay. That's for most of my life, 30 out of the 40 years of my life, everything went wrong. And not only am I okay, but I have an incredible life. And I've been gifted this, but I've also shown up. Like I continue to show up every day for my life. That's what gives me hope. Because honest to God, if I can do it, anyone could do it. And if we can overcome challenges this big, like what can we not overcome?
Thank you, Jack. I really appreciate you. I appreciate your heart and all that you do for our community. I know you're making a difference, and I hope this inspires others to do the same.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to the Giving Town podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing it with a friend who you think might benefit from hearing it. While more and more people are continuing to hear about this podcast, I still need your help to spread the message about all the people and organizations that make Newberg so great. Well, thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next episode.